hardly put my phone down and he was in the driveway. No. Good evening and welcome to the Cancer Education Series brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. These broadcasts are brought to you through a grant that we received from the Iowa Cancer Consortium. My name is Chris Goodale and I'm the Executive Director of Above and Beyond Cancer, and it is my weekly pleasure to introduce the founder of our organization, Dr. Dick Deming. And Dr. Deming will introduce our speakers for this evening for our special guests. Dr. Deming?
Great, thank you, Chris. And we do have special guests tonight. So I get to introduce to you Roger and Dianne Jones. They're both Texans, and you're in Texas right now, right?
Yes. That's right.
And so I have known Dianne and Roger since at least 2014. Dianne and Roger actually journeyed with Above and Beyond Cancer to our trip to South America, where we went up and over the Andes and came down into Machu Picchu. We had a wonderful journey. Since then, we've gotten to know each other even better. Dianne has given many talks at the Cancer Education Series in person. And Roger sort of decided he needed to get to know Above and Beyond Cancer a little more authentically. And I'm joking, but Roger was diagnosed with lymphoma about a year ago. And you know, after having journeyed with us and being a caregiver, helping cancer survivors up and over the mountains, he's now had his own personal cancer journey. Roger is a retired CPA. Dianne is a therapist, and she's still doing work with counseling and doing some virtual counseling. We'll learn more about that. And I've invited Roger and Dianne to have a conversation with us about going together as a couple on the journey through cancer and sort of life lessons that one learns along the way. So I'll turn it over now to Roger and Dianne Jones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. We're so honored to be here with you all tonight. We have the profound privilege of sharing this journey of life with others and even together tonight. To be connected, to bring more kindness and compassion into this world. We crave connection, don't we? I know I'm craving healthy connection right now and at this very time in our history. So grateful that each of you have joined us, whether it's tonight or with the recording, that we can connect in this way. My hope is that we can set aside our worries, our concerns for the day, and just be here together now. Let's just take a moment. I'd like to do just a little mini meditation, if you will, for 2 or 3 minutes, just to settle us in for a bit. I don't know where you've rushed in from, but if you could just sit comfortably, maybe as straight up as you can, with your feet on the floor. And if you feel comfortable, you can gently close your eyes. Let's go inward for a moment. Let's check on the inside. There's no need to change anything about how you're breathing. Just observe. And if your mind starts to wander, it's okay. Just listen to your body speaking. Maybe it's your hips, maybe your neck, shoulders, jaw. What part of your body is speaking the loudest to you right now? And just acknowledge what's happening. Thank you, body, for trying to tell me something. Gently and firmly move your awareness now to the part of your body that's silent, part that's not asking for anything, but it's working so hard for you. It's good just to take a moment to be connected with our bodies. Let's shift perspective now and just ask ourselves, kind of an invitation to ask ourselves a few questions. Maybe you could ask your mind, what is it that you would like to tell me? Maybe you could ask your heart, What would you like to tell me? Maybe you could ask your gut, your intuition. What would you want to gently tell me? So now let's just pay attention for a moment to our breathing. Just observe. If you've closed your eyes, you can gently open them now. Hopefully the invitation to go in is helpful in just settling ourselves in for tonight, for our time together. We are so thrilled to be here with you. We would like to share our story with you. And, you know, stories matter. Your story matters. Our story matters. And each of our cancer stories are unique. We all have a different situation. If you're in the middle of a cancer treatment right now, it's different than how we looked because you have the added layer of COVID and having to go to your appointments alone or having to go to your treatments alone. So there's so many pieces of it that can be difficult and very unique. Maybe you're in the, you know, you've just been diagnosed. Maybe you are in the hard part of a treatment. Maybe you're at a spot where you have lost a loved one and they're no longer, that's been through the cancer journey and they're no longer with us here on this earth. That's hard, it's grief. So community matters when we deal with hard stuff, and you are not alone. It's also very healthy that we can just recognize our loss and our pain. How do we hold these questions? How do we hold lament and joy at the same time? You know, how can we celebrate when you hear maybe some places where they ring the bell and so you hear someone celebrating and yet here you are sitting in the Infusion Suite room in a chair saying, yeah, I've been at this for years. You know, how do we hold lament and joy for one another? So I'd like to share with you just a little bit the initial phases of how we kind of got involved with Above and Beyond and how we met Dr. Deming. And so I'm going to share our screen with you. I've got just a few pictures. So here we are. We were headed, or there we are actually, in Peru. We were headed to Machu Picchu with the team Above and Beyond Cancer in 2014. And at that point, Roger and I were going as caregivers. So we did not have cancer. We were coming alongside to encourage and support and be with others. There we are at the airport. Little did we know what was coming ahead and how steep and how hard those hills were going to be, mountains, I should say. But, you know, I remember in that airport, here we are, barely know each other. We met Greg Shireman. He begins to tell us his story. And again, our stories matter. He begins to tell us of losing his wife and losing his son. Here, Roger and I and Greg are all three in the line to get our passes to get through security, and we're all crying because our stories are hard sometimes and they hurt, and our stories matter. Here we are holding this little lamb, and just we fell in love with the Peruvian people. Oh my goodness, they're beautiful and their hearts are just as rich as the colorful garments that they wear. Here we are in the tent, shared many meals in these tents together, but isn't that where you get to know someone, as you're sharing a meal with one another, sharing stories. And here we are. The remarkable thing about this picture is that we did survive the bus ride up to where we were going. It was quite a ride. And we're about to go on the trek, as you can see. Here, Roger and I are jumping for joy. We had just survived what at Machu Picchu is called the, what is it, the Stairs of Death or something? Is that it, Dick?
That's it. That's it. Up to the top of Huayna Picchu, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I renamed those stairs the Steps of Courage, because it took a lot of courage to do those, but you can see Machu Picchu in the background. There we are again, the crew. And then here we are with Machu Picchu in the background. It was a beautiful experience, being together, experiencing community. And you know, when you share those hard experiences with others, you develop friendships. And we are still friends, great friends with so many of the people in that picture. For one, we've worked at, you know, continuing those friendships, but two, you just have such a connection when you've done something really hard. Mary Van Hukeloorn taught us a huge, she helped us train and get our bodies in shape, but she taught us a huge thing called heel toe. So when you can't breathe, and at that altitude it was tough, you say to yourself, heel toe. And that's all you focus on, is that next heel toe, heel toe. And I tell you, that's a common lingo in mine and Roger's language. When things are tough, we're just look at each other and we're like, heel toe, heel toe. This is us at the beautiful Botanical Center in Des Moines. Roger had just completed his first PET scan after being diagnosed with cancer, and we had to make some hard decisions. We had already bought a house in Dallas, already sold our house in Des Moines. He was working kind of both places for a bit. And we went to the Botanical Center, as we often crave nature, crave beauty. And I'll let Roger take it from here.
Okay, Diane's given you a little bit of the context of, you know, morphing from 2014 to 2019. 2019 was my last year of my career with CLA. And as Dianne mentioned, we were native Texans. We had made the easy decision to come back to Texas to be with extended family and our immediate family. And so we had bought a house. We had sold our house in Des Moines, and I was really literally every week going back and forth between Dallas and Des Moines. I discovered a lump kind of right here on my mouth. I went to the dentist. He thought it was an abscess. He sent me to an oral surgeon to have a look at it, and the surgeon said, "I think I know what it is, but we'll do a biopsy and then, you know, confirm." And so the next week they called and said, you know, "Can you come in the office?" And I said, "Well, I'm in Dallas, but I'll be in Des Moines next week. I can come in then." And so it was my week to be in Des Moines. And so we went in to see Dr. Frank, and he was very courteous, but didn't pull any punches, and gave me the diagnosis. And it was a shock. He said, "Is there anybody you want me to call? Any physicians you want me to call?" I said, "Yes, please call Dr. Deming." And so I left. I was driving home. My phone pinged. I didn't answer it. I got back to the appointment, and I got it was a message from Dr. Deming. He had already returned my call, or he had already called me about the diagnosis I had gotten literally probably half hour before. And of course I didn't take it. And so he left a message, and I want to read the message if I can. He said, "I just got a call from Dr. Frank, and he told me, and I'm sorry that you're going to have to go through treatments, but," and this is the important part, "this is a very favorable prognosis, and I think we'll have a good outcome." And that was an anchor for me. And sorry, I kept the voicemail so I could look back to it. And that was, for me, it was something in the tempest that we could put an anchor to and know that things are going to be okay. Oddly enough, that week, Dianne went with me. And so she was there, and you can tell them.
Yeah. So Mary Van Hukelorn had started a book club with Above and Beyond, and she had asked if I would speak at the book club on Stop, Breathe, Believe, the book I've written. And I was like, well, sure, I'd love to. That's a good excuse to come back to Des Moines and see everybody. So I was so excited about being in Des Moines, and little did I know, I mean, we just thought he was going back to the dentist for a checkup. We really were not clued in of what might happen. So it was kind of shocking when I called Roger and said, hey, what are you doing? You know, and he said, you need to come back to the apartment. It's not good. And so I went back, but I was scheduled to speak that night at the book club. And it was really fascinating. We met actually with Dr. Deming that afternoon.
Dr. Deming offered to see us that very afternoon. We went in, and he kind of walked us through the diagnosis, what the treatment was going to be like, and it was just hugely comforting to have a dear friend and a very competent professional tell us straightly what we were faced against. And so she went to the book club that evening.
Yes, believe it. I mean, I was like, is this crazy that I'm going? And I called Mary. I said, Mary, I just got to tell you. And so I told her about Roger's diagnosis. I said, but I'm coming to book club. I'm not going to back out on you. You've got people coming. I'm coming. We'll do it. And as I shared, you know, in the very beginning with them, with the participants that came about that, and the looks on their faces, they knew much more what was ahead of us than I knew. And I was still like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And, but they were so sweet and so encouraging. And it was just great to be there with them.
And so we're that week. We met again with Dr. Deming. He ordered a PET scan. It was promptly conducted. He led us through the results of the PET scan, and again told us, you know, what we could expect from the treatment. Again, at that point, we had kind of a decision to make about treatment because I was back and forth between Dallas and Des Moines, and it really made sense to do the treatment in Dallas, even though, you know, we would have much preferred Des Moines. But with that, you know, being new to Des Moines, we had no contacts. And so it put us in a position where, you know, we had to decide, okay, who are we going to seek for treatment? And so we tried to use the resources that were at our avail, which we have two nieces that are healthcare professionals, and a nephew-in-law that's a doctor, and they helped us kind of navigate the team that we would identify as our team in Dallas to seek treatment. And so with that, so yeah, picture we have couple of, we'll go back to some more pictures. So this is kind of in the middle of chemo. My hair started to fall out, so I preemptively said, I'm just going to shave it all off. And so we went to the hairstylist and elected to shave it all off. And
I was going to Lake Tahoe. I was a keynote speaker for a retreat, and I just couldn't fathom the idea that Roger's hair, you know, might start falling out in clumps or whatever, like they say. And so, what do you think? I think you're going to be beautiful bald. And so, here we got to see. And there he is.
Yes, and this is in chemo treatment, standard treatment for the cancer that I have, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And as part of that experience, I, about a year later, penned a poem about the Infusion Suite. And so I thought I would share that with you.
Can I take it off here?
Yes, you can.
So I just want to say, because Roger's retired, he, you know, if it says occupation, now he can write poet. He's been writing poetry and it's amazing.
Okay, well, so the poem is entitled The Infusion Suite. The surgeon's office called to ask if I could come in after a biopsy. Blindsided would be accurate to name that visit. Cancer had called my number, as it has for so many of us. A number of tests, doctor visits, and medications were in order, to which I eventually made my way to the Infusion Suite, the fancy pants name for what I call a cancer ward, the place of dreaded chemotherapy sessions. Down the hall, my angel wife and I entered through 2 sets of double doors, and I checked in at the nurse's station. Asked gently to take any of the remaining reclining chairs arranged in the 2 U-shaped arrangements. I picked the nearest available, as if that might get me some sort of special attention. I surveyed the room, trying not to be conspicuous. Largely full, there seemed people of assorted ages, ethnicity, gender, and other dissections. A gentleman across me tells me he's been in treatment 3 years. I marveled, thinking that fortitude I didn't have. My infusion regimen of 5 medications lasted the day. One by one, my veins absorbed the cocktail of strangely named drugs, each politely described, anxiously received. We finally walked out through those 2 sets of double doors, knowing the hard part was yet to come. The Infusion Suite. So chemotherapy, as we know, is a tough, it's a beatdown. And one of the things that Dr. Deming had told us was, you know, during treatment and recovery, there's going to be curveballs. There's going to be things that arise that, you know, you'll have to deal with, but you will be able to deal with them. And so in the middle of chemo, I got shingles, and I got a big outbreak on my left leg and my hip, and it was a pretty horrendous situation from the pain. I could not, and obviously it put chemotherapy back because it's so contagious, but I could not get comfortable. I couldn't lay, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't sit in a chair. So I found myself just in the middle of the night, walking up the halls and down the halls of our house. That's the only way I could feel comfortable about it. One evening, in the middle of the night, I was just to my breaking point. I called the oncologist's office and talked to the doctor that was on call, and probably woke him up and in the middle of the night and told him, hey, this is pretty rough. And he said, well, you got 2 options. You can go to the ER or ride it out. And so I was like, okay. I think I hung up and I said, maybe I can ride this thing out. And so I did ride it out, and eventually the shingles subsided and I resumed treatment. And at the end of the chemo, I was also scheduled for radiation therapy, and I had a PET scan, and so as we know, those can be anxious times, especially when you're in the doctor's office, the oncologist's office, and he comes in to give you the news, and he came in and he said, your scan was clear, and I said, okay, that's great, and he said, and I said, so now we'll do radiation, and then I'll have another PET scan, and then if it's clear, I'll be in remission. And he said, no, I wanted to be clear. You're in remission right now. And it just bowled me over.
So we had this amazing doctor here. His name's Dr. Kavor, and he, at that moment, just hugged Roger, just like you would have, Dr. Deming, and just embraced him. He's a, tall man, just like Roger, and they just stood there, embraced, and Dr. Kavor had huge tears in his eyes because he could sense the relief that Roger felt. So we were like, oh, so radiation just is like the for sure thing, like the cleanup, the whatever. And I don't know in other cancers if that's the case, but for us, it was just like, oh, but we also had heard, about radiation, and that it wasn't going to be a cakewalk through that for sure as well. And so anyway, you want me to keep going?
Yes, and I'll just add that, when I walked out, it was of the office. I was taking some deep breaths, and I was looking at the trees. It was a moment of complete presence. Continue.
So the reality is, in this is we learn to look for the joy and look for the things that bring us joy. And I often refer to that in my therapy as a joy scavenger hunt. Because sometimes, and that all started when a friend helped me or taught me that, as my dad was really struggling with Parkinson's. And so years ago, it was like, she's like, Dianne, you just got to look for the joy. I was like, look, you don't understand. There is no joy in this gig. And she's like, I know, but just make it a joy scavenger hunt. And so Roger and I really embraced that. So here we are, this picture having the Starbucks, because this was just one of those chemo days. I mean, we get out at whatever time, 5 or 6 o'clock, Roger's exhausted and really doesn't feel that good, but I'm like, we're going to celebrate. We made it, one more chemo treatment. Woohoo, we're down one more. And so we just look for every little thing. Here we are. This was a day that Roger pretty much had been on the couch all day, just had felt horrible. And so our little granddaughter and I came up with the idea that we would have a tea party in the garage. And so Sterling, our dog, joined us, and we had a tea party in the garage. I don't remember what we pretended we were celebrating, but it got Roger off the couch. So that was the good thing there. Just to have that support. Here we are celebrating after the final scan. I think it was in August or something, after even we learned that the radiation had been effective as well. And so we were like, we heard there was a restaurant in Dallas that had a Ferris wheel. We were so pumped. We went. It was a little overrated, but that was probably probably getting on that Ferris wheel was more dangerous than some of the chemo and stuff. I tell you, this is our son, Justin, and his wife, Callie. And so what we wanted to share with you now is just the amount of support and how critical it is for support from your community, from your family. These are our grandkids, and they're so precious. But as you can see, Joy on the left would just crawl up with Raji, is what she calls him, in bed. And Amelia on the right was born in April. And so, you know, Roger couldn't hold the kids when he was standing up because he didn't have the strength, but he could certainly hold them in his lap. And Amelia and Raji have quite the bond because they spent many, many hours just looking at each other because she was so little and so cute, and they just would look at each other and find that connection. It was huge.
She was born a week after the first round of chemo.
Yeah. And then this is our daughter, Jill, and her husband, Brent, now husband, Brent. I want to clarify, this is not her wedding dress. They flew in from LA several times to check on her daddy. She was obviously concerned about her daddy. She's a huge love for him. And so they came in several times, and here they were engaged, set to be married in Nepal, and we were going to plan on going on a hike. Well, talk about that more in a minute, but here we are playing around, trying to create a light moment, and she has on my wedding dress, and of course it fit her perfectly, and I thought she looked beautiful, and Brent's looking on like, okay, whatever, and Raji's pretending to be the proud dad. But you know, it's hard. I mean, at that moment, I can tell you what was going through my mind, and that was, I hope Roger makes it to the wedding. Not, the Nepal thing was like way out there. I just was hoping that he lived. And it, you know, it was scary. It was really scary. And as the caregiver, you know, you want to be there for them. Here's a really sweet picture. If Sterling was missing around, or wherever Roger was, that's where Sterling was. And you can see here, this is unlike Sterling. She doesn't get up on the bed, but wherever Roger was.
You can't persuade her to get up on the bed.
But through this, she never left Roger's side. She was by him every step of the way. Didn't matter what position, where he was, she was there. And you know, it's also true for a lot of our friends. We have a strong faith, and the deep roots of our faith were certainly felt and needed and very present for us. There's a chair out by our pool, and I'm an early riser, so I'd get up and go sit in that chair. It was the prayer chair, it was the crying chair. I mean, I cried so many hours, but you know, you're just so afraid, and that's normal and that's real. And I had vowed, I'm pretty good at being happy all the time, or sugarcoating things, or looking through positive lens glasses. And I was really committed that understanding this is going to be tough, but that I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to pay attention to what I was feeling. I wanted to be compassionate towards myself, because I felt like that would give me the ability to be more compassionate towards Roger and towards others. So, but as I would sit in that chair and meditate or pray, you know, there's a beautiful verse. You'll often hear people say, "Peace be with you." And that's a nice prayer to say for someone, but there's a scripture that says, "Peace be within you." And that was really my prayer. It was my prayer for Roger. It was my prayer for myself. It was my prayer for our kids. That deep within us, we would feel a peace and a sense of knowing. And you know what I mean, and everyone comes to things from a different spiritual perspective, but for us, it just showed me one more time, you know, God just shows up and meets us right where we are. And that was, you know, our prayer, that God would touch our hearts just where it needed the most, because this emotional and spiritual piece of healing is just as critical and just as important as the physical pieces. Roger was working really, really, really hard to stay in good shape, because we did have this huge dynamic would be the right word, I think.
That's a new word.
A new word, but it's good because it was huge, that we thought we were going to be hiking in Nepal. And the reality was he could barely walk down the block. And so how are we going to get from here to there? The support of our friends, we would get a box from Roger's office. We would get cards and letters. There's no telling how many times I called my sisters just crying and crying, because we were trying to be strong for our kids and everybody's trying to be strong for each other. But the reality is there's just a lot of fear and heartache that goes into a significant diagnosis and into the cancer world. But the support is huge. You're not alone if you're in this process. And if you feel you're alone, you can just email or call us and we'll be right there with you, because it's hard. And but it's so valuable to be with others and to come along, have others come alongside. And here we go, Dr. Deming. You tried to show us, it was so cute when we met with Dr. Deming one time to look at the x-rays of, I think, the PET scan. Would that be correct, Dr. Deming? Mm-hmm. He shows us this mask. I'm like, well, that thing looks weird. Well, you get to be pretty good friends with this mask.
Yeah,
so this is radiation.
The radiation phase began obviously after chemo, and I had 17 days of radiation. It seemed like much more than that, and I really empathize with radiation cancer patients that have to do more extensive regimen than that. I suffered from the classic radiation symptoms: exhaustion, lack of energy. My mouth, they call it, it's like a sunburn inside your mouth. And so I couldn't drink anything but water, anything but soft food. So, it was a beat down. And through the treatment process, I was getting very irritable, very highly irritable, and also weeping, crying, at very short order. And so the oncologist team, I was reporting this to them, and they suggested that I go to a psychotherapist, and which we certainly jumped on. And our therapist, she's a psychologist, but she specializes with cancer patients. And her office at that time was actually in the same building as the oncologist's office. And that was seminal, I think, in helping me to begin to understand, some of the things that I was feeling, and, how to develop a strategy for those. And as part of that, the therapist observed, one of the things that was just eating at me was the diminishment in my physicality. And she suggested, that I might consider physical therapy. And I did that as well. I went through 2 different rounds of, one was it was in the cancer office, and it was specially kind of designed for cancer patients. And then I did a second round for my knees because they got really creaky. And, I would, as Dianne mentioned, at one point, I barely walked down to the end of the block and back. And so, so the physical therapy was a godsend, because it just helped me to turn that corner and start getting back some of the physical strength that was, important to me. And with that, it was just a resource that I was so glad that we had. And,
Let me do this part.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
You
I'll turn
guys,
it over.
this tag teaming thing's a hoot for us. So we're trying here. I was so grateful for our therapist because it was nice to be able to share the load with someone. And, there's so many intimate parts of the cancer treatment of, that you don't just share with everyone. And so it was so nice to be able to share that with her. And certainly I'm not going to go out, be talking to everyone about, y'all would not believe how irritable Roger's being. He's about to drive me crazy. I don't know what to do. You just don't, I didn't want to talk about Roger like that with others. So it was such a relief to be able to share that with Dr. Taylor, and she was amazing. And, just really to get a handle on, isn't cancer an amazing teacher of patience and grace? So we've learned that one of the most difficult times of treatment, or the cancer experience, let me say, is after treatment stops. Because no longer are you rushing to appointments and trying to schedule it all in and trying to work with all the medications, and you've already learned about all these things you never wanted to know about, the nausea gum and all the nausea stuff and all this stuff. But here you are, and you're not really back to normal yet in any stretch of the imagination. And so, it's difficult for Roger to be patient with that. Well, me too. I wanted him better soon also, but it was really difficult to wait and allow his body to restore itself. And so it was tough. And, we learned a lot about grief during that time. And I love Brene Brown's teaching on grief, because grief is such a huge thing. And so how do you even get your arms around that? But Brene breaks it into 3 categories. Grief into longing, feeling lost, L-O-S-T, and loss, L-O-S-S. And so, whether it's grieving the disappointment over not being able to do this or that, or just all the different facets of grief, if we can slow down long enough to kind of put those into different categories of, as I'm experiencing grief today, what is it that I'm longing for? Or maybe as I'm experiencing grief today, where am I feeling lost? And, I was just hoping Roger got better, because I don't have a clue what's going on with our finances. And if he didn't get better, this was going to be an issue, because I was going to have to call in some help quick. And so obviously we need to make adjustments there. But that's just an example of, particularly in our case where we've been, you kind of become codependent in different ways in this symbiotic relationship of a marriage. And so then to recognize, woo, I might be doing this alone. There's a lot of fear and grief that can come in there. So, and then the loss, L-O-S-S, for our friends that have, lost someone to cancer, it's rough. I mean, we've lost several people in our family just this year to cancer. Some of our dear friends, one of our friends that went on the Above and Beyond trip with us, Bill Logier. It is so hard to get your arms around some of the grief that we're asked to deal with. And right now in our culture, I think it's complicated grief as well with everything else that's going on. So, how do we look for the joy? How do we keep our emotional world in a healthy place? And we did many things. We took a mindfulness workshop for cancer patients that they offered. We did art therapy. We did about everything you can think of just to to pay attention to and work on our mental and emotional health. And the beauty there was we had learned asking for help is a strength. And Dr. Taylor was incredible help. And the reality is we still meet with her today. We'll show you a picture in a bit about that, but she's amazing. So, you know, just that we could have self-compassion towards ourselves during those hard times. Try to have compassion with one another when we're either irritable or really frustrated with one another through the process. So those are things that we tried to hold on to and look at.
And we, you know, certainly value friends and our relationships. And one story, one day during treatment, I walked out to take our dog for a brief walk. And as I walked out, I met up with this gentleman, and I said, hey, you know, how are you doing? He said, not too good. I've got cancer. I said, I do too. And we just hit it off. And he had leukemia. He's a leukemia survivor. Had a horrible experience. Been about a month in the hospital with. He had I believe a stem cell transplant, and you know, just all the complications with that. And then, you know. So are we ready to talk about?
So I would just say Roger and Joshua's relationship has been such a stronghold for both of them. They've been able to share, you know, the experiences together. They do a lot of walking together. Roger took a trip down to their lake cabin. They went kayaking together. It's just been such a nice relationship. And again, the value of connection. You know, we're created for connecting. We're created to belong, you know, with one another. And so it's really been huge.
So Joshua, he at the time he was kind of thinking about some things that he wanted to do, that he was thinking about doing from a business perspective. And I just told him, I said, Joshua, you know, sometimes you just got to swing for the fences. And it just released him.
Yeah. And so he's done some incredible business things through that. So it's been really cool. One of the goals as we were hiking through treatment, chemo, radiation, was that we were determined to get here. This was our big goal. This is our daughter, Jill, in the pink. That's her wedding dress. And Brent is to her right. And then Justin and Callie and Roger and I. So we are in Nepal where she got married.
Those are the mighty Himalayas in the background. And so this wedding was a long-term project, as you might expect. And when we met with Dr. Deming, we asked him, you know, we're in the formative planning for the wedding, and 1,000 questions. And we asked him, you know, do you think it's, you know, possible we'll be able to go to Nepal? And he said, yes, I do. And
so we're in Nepal, and Roger sends Dick this text. which I don't think Dick ever got because
It failed. But
the connection was a little sketchy up on top of this mountain. But it says, "Hi, Dick. 1 year ago, on this very day, I received my cancer diagnosis, and you gracefully and skillfully led us through it. During the conversation, we mentioned that our daughter was getting married in Nepal, and you expressed confidence that we would be able to go. You were spot on. The beautiful wedding was in stunning Pokhara. We now have trekked to Namche. Thank you so much for your friendship and your counsel." So here we are. Well, wait, I want to go back to this slide because I failed to mention when I was talking about the support. Brent, Jill's husband, lost his mother to a really quick and very, very difficult cancer battle. And so Brent has been such a support for Roger and I through this whole process, because that knowing experience, that empathic response is just amazing. One night when it was really difficult and Jill and Brent were in town, I think he could hear Roger, I can't remember what the situation was, coughing or something, and Brent was the first one up. "Let me take over for the night. Let me help." And just that knowing presence has been so huge. And even, you know, when it's holidays or something, you know, he just is amazing. So I had failed to say that when we were talking about the support that that the kids have offered. So it's really cool.
And this is this is to the background, and to the left is Mount Everest. And this is from the Namche area, which is where I attempted to send the message to Dick that, you know, here we are at 13,500 feet and we made it. And
so to be clear, we did not hike to the base camp of Everest, which would have been probably our goal pre-cancer. We left that to Jill and Brent. No, don't think we're going to do that. But here, this picture was taken from, I believe it's called Everest View Hotel. Yep. And so it's a gorgeous view. We did an amazing hike. Roger did fantastic. We had guides and helpers along the way, but Roger made it. He did great. It was such an experience. And so we were very grateful. We trained very hard, but it was the dream in sight, you know, for us, for sure. We're very grateful, you know, that we could do that.
yes.
One of the things that we so love is being out in nature, and we really, those are the values that we hold on to, you know, of being out in nature, being inspired, just like Roger talked about that time when we walked out of the treatment, and he just, you know, felt so present even with the trees. And so that's a huge part of the things that we like to do. We also been really conscientious. We eat you know, kind of our daily things that we do that we did before cancer, we're certainly doing now, because the doctors have mentioned multiple times our health going in was probably a huge factor in the positive outcome of the treatment. So the things of eating a plant-based diet, we try to do yoga every day, we exercise a lot, but we have fun doing it. It's not a dread. We create fun ways to do that. And then here's our therapist, and we had trouble connecting this day.
This is a picture from yesterday, which, you know, we can, it gives you an idea of the tale that recovery can take. And I just need it. And it's helpful.
So we're so grateful for this gal. She walks a lot of situations for us through. I know we're about out of time, but there's two quotes that I wanted, that Roger and I wanted to share with y'all. Well, one I really wanted to share, And it is this, and I just think it's so critical when we're thinking of coming alongside others and needing others to come alongside us. And that is, and that is a quote by Virginia Satir. It says, "I believe the greatest gift I can conceive of having from anyone is to be seen by them, heard by them, to be understood and touched by them. And the greatest gift I can give is to see, to hear, to understand, and to touch another person."
That's nice.
I hope that in our chat tonight, I guess we could call this a fireside chat, that it's been helpful, that we could share with you part of our story. I hope there, you know, as we thought about this and prepared for it, we're hopeful that there's a nugget from our story, knowing our story is different from your story, but that there's a nugget of something, wisdom or truth or hope. We'd love to be a hope dispenser for you. You know, that we could just offer that to you. So we're open to questions. You can ask us anything. So I think maybe, I don't know if there's a chat place you could ask questions or what, but,
Yeah.
or Dick, you may have questions for us.
I do. I'm going to start off. So I'm going to take the prerogative of the first question. So thank you for sharing your story. You know, I was moved listening, and I would say that one part of the story that really resonated with me, and then I've got a question about this, but when you had that first PET scan after the chemo and your doctor, the interaction you had with your doctor, and the joy of being told you're in remission. And one of the things, you know, life is a series of ups and downs, and no one's going to have a flat life, and no one would ever, what a boring life a flat life would be. But part of it, that moment of absolute ecstasy could not have existed without the difficulty that had brought you to that point. And
That's right.
as we think about those moments and the moments afterwards where you go to the Ferris wheel, and do you ever, and then also the sort of the postpartum blues when you're through the treatment, it's like, what's next? That savoring those moments of joy, and also realizing that they won't, that high, that absolute high, that would not have happened without the lows that preceded it. And does that influence or change the way you live your life, or the way you are on the lookout for joy each and every day?
Oh yeah, you know, absolutely. You know, the journey is that survivors go on. As you say, I mean, there's bound to be ups and downs, and just the experience of it, it really lends itself to a quote from somebody that's on this Dr. Deming. I think it's perfect for response, don't you?
Yeah. So here's a quote from you, Dr. Deming.
Yes.
Okay.
Cancer survivors don't truly know if they will make it to the summit, but they do know that the journey will transform their lives, just as cancer has transformed their lives. Some challenges come to us uninvited and undesired. Other challenges come to us because we have the courage and confidence to reach above and beyond what we think we can do. That's just beautifully said and encapsulates. There's the answer to your question.
How's that? I think too, you know, just trying to find moments of gratitude through all those things, because even the ecstasy that you feel in that moment or that day, that's not going to be there the next day when you're tired and grumpy again or whatever. And so, you know, just the moments, and how can we learn from that, our experience? How can we encourage others? And just how can we begin to pay attention enough to the little beautiful moments along the way, you know, and just how can we be grateful for this day, this hour, this moment, our breath, our bodies are amazing. And so how do we today take care of that? I mean, you know, it just really opens itself to reflecting on the sacredness of every moment.
Well, thank you so much. We have come to the end of our hour. Thank you. This was just beautiful. When you were starting to tell the story, and when we actually met as patient and doctor, I took the opportunity to bring up my notes from that first meeting on March 12th, 2019. And then we met 2 days later with the PET scan, and really, it seems like a lifetime ago, and it wasn't even 2 years. But thank you for sharing your story, and more importantly, thanks for sharing your nuggets of wisdom and your compassion. And you know, even the way you offered to walk with others on their journey if they don't have someone to walk with them. We all get along with the help of friends. And thank you for sharing your love and compassion. And I can't wait to go on another mountain climb with you guys.
Yeah. So what Roger and Dr. Deming are doing is this idea of namaste. And really, you know, if you don't do yoga or you're not into that, you may not quite understand what that means, but it really is may the divine in me see and honor the divine in you. And I just think that's such a beautiful, beautiful way to go about the cancer journey.
Well, thank you for sharing. You have a beautiful evening. Everyone who joined us, please enjoy your evening and come join us again next week. Thanks, everybody.
We put on the last slide.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, an email in case someone wants a copy of Roger's beautiful poem, the Infusion Suite. They can find it there. So it's on that last slide.
And could you bring that last slide up? And Dianne, also, sure. I know that you have some workshops that people can participate in. You do workshops on your own, and you also do workshops with Brene Brown. And if you want to show us the slide, how individuals could reach out to you to learn more.
Yeah. My website's DianneMorrisJones.com. So everything's there. I'm doing a workshop beginning in a couple of weeks on Stop, Breathe, Believe, the book that we wrote. And then on Wednesdays, we'll be doing a workshop on Daring Greatly, which is the book, the curriculum that Brene Brown has written. But we're going to focus it in on grief, looking through the lens of grief. So to be clear, I do workshops on Brene's material. Brene's not with me in these workshops that I do. So I want to be clear about that. We wouldn't be able to afford those workshops if she were with us. So anyway, but she's a great teacher of courage and vulnerability and all the things that come up during a cancer experience. So, but yeah, reach out to us if you need anything from us. We're open, we're available. We'd love to hear from you.
And it's a beautiful book. It's a lovely book, Mindful Living, One Thought at a Time. So
thank you, Dr. Deming.
Thank you again for being with us. And I can't wait till we're together again. And the circumstances allow us to actually hug each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.